My daughter said, "I'm happy you're not my dad at the family dinner." Everyone laughed, including her mom. I was shocked, but when I decided to investigate, I realized something that changed everything. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to John Brooks from Michigan. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. We were halfway through the roast when it happened, right as I passed the mashed potatoes to my daughter, Leah, and she looked at me with that mischievous smirk she always wore when trying to be funny. "I'm just happy you're not my dad," she said, laughing through a mouthful of cornbread. The room froze for a split second, just long enough for my heart to catch on a hook, before everyone burst into laughter. Her mother, my wife of 17 years, threw her head back and laughed the loudest, like it was the funniest thing she'd heard in weeks. I chuckled too, mostly out of habit, but something inside me didn't laugh. It just stopped, like a faucet shut off midstream. Leah went back to her plate like nothing had happened. No apology. No sideways glance. Just the kind of carefree ease a teenager has when she believes the world revolves around her. And maybe it did, for all the wrong reasons. I couldn't taste the food after that. My fork moved in and out of my mouth like a machine, but my head spun in a whirl of old doubts and half-memories I'd long buried under routine. I kept hearing her voice echo in my skull, that mocking cadence, "Not my dad," over and over again. I had raised her since she was 2. I taught her how to ride a bike, stayed up with her through asthma attacks, paid for her braces, her iPhone, her college prep classes. I sat through every parent-teacher conference, every ballet recital, even the ones where she forgot the steps and cried in the car afterward. I wasn't her biological father, but we never talked about that. Or at least, I was told not to. Her mother said it would confuse her. "You're the only dad she knows," she'd say when I asked if we should tell Leah the truth. Why complicate things? Now I wondered if that was a lie too. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. People made small talk about gas prices and some new Netflix show, but I couldn't focus. I watched Leah joke with her cousins, dipping her bread in gravy, laughing like a girl with nothing to hide. And my wife, Samantha, kept refilling her wine glass, leaning against the counter like a woman without a care in the world. I knew that body language. I'd read it for years. She was relaxed, a little smug, maybe even proud. That was when the second punch landed, softer but just as painful. I realized that joke hadn't been spontaneous. It was a private laugh they had shared before. Maybe in hushed tones in the kitchen, behind closed doors. Maybe it was an old joke between mother and daughter, when I wasn't on. Later that night, after the last guest left and the dishwasher hummed in the background, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the floor. Samantha came in, unbothered, unbrushed, already halfway into her silk robe. "That was fun tonight," she said casually, not even looking at me. I didn't answer right away. I just kept staring, as if the carpet might tell me what to do. When I finally spoke, my voice was quieter than I expected. What did she mean by that? She paused, annoyed. "What, Leah?" What she said. "I'm happy you're not my dad." What did she mean? Samantha waved it off. "Oh, come on. You know how sarcastic she is." She didn't mean anything. She didn't even flinch, Sam, I said. She didn't look at me once after she said it. "And you laughed like you knew something." Her mouth tightened. That was always her tell. The tiniest sliver of guilt sliding across her face like a cloud passing the sun. "You're overthinking it." "Am I?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just turned, walked into the bathroom, and closed the door. The click of the lock felt louder than her laughter had been. I stayed up that night combing through old photos on my phone, old memories I used to treasure. Leah as a flower girl, clinging to my hand. Leah on my shoulders at the state fair, pointing at the Ferris wheel. Leah asleep on the couch, clutching my thumb when she had the flu. But the more I looked, the more something felt off. Like I was looking at someone else's life, or someone else's family. I tried to find pictures of the three of us, me, Samantha, and Leah together. But there were barely any, and in the ones that did exist, I always looked slightly out of place, like a step behind. like the guy holding the camera, not part of the moment. That was when I pulled out the drawer in my home office and found the old envelope from when Leah was born. Hospital documents, birth records, stuff Samantha told me not to worry about at the time because we weren't married yet and it was complicated. I never opened it. I trusted her. I wanted to believe the story she fed me. But that night, I slit the top open with my pocket knife and read the lines that shattered whatever illusions I had left. Father, unknown. My heart went quiet. Not broken, not angry, just quiet, like the way a room feels after the last guest has left, and all that's left are crumbs and wine rings. I sat there for a long time, the paper in my lap, my breath shallow. And in that stillness, a strange kind of calm washed over me. Not peace exactly. More like clarity. I had spent years being something for someone who didn't see me, who never saw me. And now that I finally saw myself, I knew exactly what I had to do next. The next morning, I couldn't look at her. Either of them. Samantha hummed in the kitchen like nothing had happened, frying eggs and sipping her coffee like it was any other day. Leah sat at the counter scrolling her phone, headphones in, completely disengaged. I stood in the hallway watching them through the cracked door, this quiet domestic scene playing out like it still meant something. But it didn't. Not anymore. Not after what I knew. I wasn't angry yet. I was something worse, focused. The kind of focus that comes after betrayal, when your emotions are too raw to touch, so you put them away like knives and pull out reason instead. I called out sick from work. Told them I had a stomach bug, which wasn't a lie, really. I felt sick, just not from anything a doctor could fix. Once they were both gone, Samantha to her yoga class, Leah to a friend's house, I opened her laptop. I felt a twinge of guilt, but not enough to stop me. The password was still my birthday. That stung more than anything. How easy it was to crack into the private life of someone who'd lied to me so completely. Inside her email, I searched Leah's name, then mine, then phrases like real father and DNA test. Nothing obvious came up. But in one thread from years ago, titled Need to Talk, there it was. A message to her sister, Megan. I keep thinking I should tell him. Leah's getting older, and sometimes she says stuff that makes me nervous. But he's such a good provider, and he loves her like his own. Why blow it all up now? Dated 8 years ago. 8 years. She had been sitting on this truth since Leah was 9. That meant every birthday, every holiday, every school performance, Samantha had smiled beside me knowing I was raising another man's child. And she let me. No, encouraged me. Because I was convenient. Because I paid the bills, fixed the sink, kept the fridge full. I wasn't a partner, I was infrastructure. I leaned back in the chair, the screen glowing in front of me like an open wound. I could have screamed, could have trashed the house. But I didn't. That wasn't my way. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Megan. She answered on the third ring. Hey, what's up? Megan, I said slowly. I need you to be honest with me. A pause. Okay. Did you know Leah wasn't mine? Dead silence. Not even a breath. Then, softly, I thought you knew. I closed my eyes. That sentence. I thought you knew. That was the sound of a rope slipping loose from its knot. How long? I asked. She sighed. Since the beginning, Mark. Look, Sam made a mistake. It was a one-night thing. She didn't find out she was pregnant until weeks later. But you were already in her life by then. She said she'd tell you. I assumed she did. She never did. Another pause. I'm sorry. I really am. I hung up. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel across town. Small, anonymous. The kind of place where no one asked questions if you paid in advance. I needed space to think, to plan. I sat in the room's plastic chair and stared at the ceiling for hours, not moving, not speaking. It felt like grief. Not the grief of death, but the grief of deception, the slow realization that everything you built was rooted in something false. And underneath that grief, rage waited, cold and patient. I made 2 calls the next morning. One to my lawyer, the other to the property manager who handled Leah's off-campus apartment. I didn't say much, just the facts. I'm filing for divorce. Effective immediately, and I'd like to begin eviction proceedings for my daughter's unit. She's not on the lease. I am. The words tasted foreign, but necessary. Like medicine you take knowing it'll make you sick before it makes you better. By the time I got home, they were both there, Leah back from her sleepover, Samantha in her workout clothes. She looked up as I entered, casually, as if nothing had shifted in the world. "Hey babe, feeling better?" I didn't answer. Just walked to the bedroom and started packing. It took her 2 minutes to follow. "What are you doing?" she asked, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. "I think you know." She laughed, short and bitter. "Don't be dramatic." I turned to face her, suitcase half full. "You let me believe she was mine. You were her father, Mark." "No," I said coldly. "I was your cover story. Your paycheck. Your excuse. And I'm done." "Jesus, you're really doing this." Her voice pitched up, panic creeping in. "Over one joke?" "No," I said. "Over 17 years of lies." Down the hall, Leah called out, "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I zipped the suitcase, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past both of them. I didn't know them as seen. The truth was loud enough on its own. Samantha showed up at the hotel the next morning. I heard her voice before I saw her, sharp, insistent, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. I was coming back from the vending machine, a sad excuse for breakfast in my hand, when she spotted me by the elevators. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just walked right up and said, "You need to come home." I looked at her, really looked, hair still perfect, manicured hands clenched into fists. I used to admire her composure. Now it looked like armor. "I'm not coming back," I said flatly. She didn't flinch. "You're blowing everything up over something that happened before we were even serious." "You lied to me for 17 years, I said. "You let me believe I was her father. You let me pay for everything, love her like she was mine, protect her like a fool. She is yours," she snapped. "In every way that matters." "No," I said, voice tight low. "She's yours. And whoever the hell the real father is. I was the bank account you married when it got too real." She rolled her eyes. "That's not fair." "What's fair," I said, stepping closer, "is that I get to decide how I spend the rest of my life. And it won't be playing dad to a kid who laughs at me for not being her blood, while you sit back and smirk like it's some inside joke." Her face shifted then. Not guilt, not sadness, just irritation, like a woman who'd been inconvenienced at the worst time. "You really think this is going to make you feel better? Burning it all down?" "No," I said, "but it'll stop me from bleeding." She left without another word. That night, I lay on the hotel bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how many other truths she'd buried beneath that calm surface. I remembered all the times Leah had pulled away from me, all the moments she'd ignored my advice, all the little rejections I'd chalked up to teenage angst. Maybe it wasn't rebellion. Maybe she just knew. Knew I wasn't the real thing. Knew I was just a placeholder. That stung more than I could admit. The next day, my lawyer filed the divorce paperwork. He was efficient, clinical, expensive. "Worth every cent. You've got a strong case," he told me. "No prenup, full financial records in your name. We'll keep it clean." "Nothing about this is clean," I muttered. When Leah got served her eviction notice that same afternoon, she called me. Her voice shook with rage. "What the hell, Dad?" she snapped, emphasizing the word like it was a curse. "You don't get to call me that anymore," I said. Calm. Cold. Final. "You're evicting me? Seriously? After everything?" "After everything, yes," I said. "You laughed in my face at dinner. You knew I wasn't your father and treated it like a joke. You made your feelings clear. I'm just following your lead." There was silence on the other end. "Mom told me," she finally said, quieter. "She told me years ago." I waited. Let the silence hang between us. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "It did," I replied. "It mattered every single day." She hung up. That was the first time I cried. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just tears slipping down my cheeks while I stared at my phone screen. She was gone now. Not in body, she'd still exist, still walk the earth, still post selfies and order overpriced coffee, but gone from my world. And the cruel part was, I wasn't sure if she ever really had been in it. Not fully. I took a week off work. Didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to texts. The hotel room became a cocoon. Stale air, muted TV noise, and the cold hum of the mini-fridge. I lived off takeout and microwaved soup. But in that stillness, something else emerged, resolve. I started looking for a new place. A small one-bedroom near the park, nothing fancy. Just mine. I sold the house, liquidated the joint accounts, and moved the rest to a new bank under my name alone. Samantha tried to stall it, but the lawyer kept her in check. It moved faster than she expected. I think she thought I'd cool off. Crawl back. Apologize. She never understood me at all. By the end of the month, I was in my new place. No family photos on the walls. Just blank space and peace. I bought a cheap coffee maker, unpacked my books, and sat in silence most nights with nothing but the sound of traffic through the window. It wasn't joyful, but it was honest. And after so many years of lies, I needed honesty more than happiness. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles in when the noise of obligation dies out. No more daily texts about groceries. No more emails about Leah's tuition. No more passive-aggressive sighs from across the kitchen table. My new apartment was modest, clean white walls, a second-hand couch that smelled faintly of pine cleaner, and a small balcony that overlooked a noisy street. But it was mine. Entirely mine. For the first time in 17 years, no one needed anything from me. And while part of me still reached out reflexively, checking the time to make sure Leah was home safe, wondering if the garbage got taken out, I started to enjoy the stillness. It didn't last, of course. Samantha came at me through the lawyer next. She filed a countersuit demanding spousal support, claiming she had sacrificed career advancement to raise our daughter. My lawyer called me into the office with a raised eyebrow and a thick folder. She wants 10 years of alimony, he said. And backdated child support, as if you weren't already paying for everything since Leah was in diapers. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it broke something loose in me. Let her try, I said. I've got receipts. And I did. Every tuition invoice, every orthodontist payment, every summer camp check, every laptop upgrade, every emergency fund. Samantha hadn't sacrificed anything. She just didn't have to lift a finger because I took care of it all. Not out of obligation, but love. A love she let rot behind the curtain while she rehearsed her lines for this grand performance. Still, the days that followed weren't triumphant. They were hollow. I walked through my new place like a ghost, brushing my teeth in silence, eating dinner in front of the TV because the quiet made everything echo. I thought about Leah constantly, what she was doing, where she was living now, whether she'd figured out who her real father was or even cared. I wondered if she hated me. If Samantha had twisted the story, painted me as the bitter man who couldn't handle a joke. One night, I got drunk enough to scroll through old photos again. Leah's 10th birthday, her arms wrapped around my neck as she blew out the candles. A blurry video of us dancing in the living room while Sam laughed from behind the camera. A Christmas morning where Leah cried when she got the dog she'd begged for. That dog, I realized, had been mine too when I left. Sam never asked me about him, never offered to bring him by. It was like they deleted me as neatly as clearing a browser history. Then came the text. From Leah, I just want you to know I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought you knew. Mom said you knew. I stared at it for a long time. 5 sentences, none of which took responsibility. None of which felt like truth. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on. You thought I knew, but still laughed like it was a secret. That's what hurt. She didn't respond. Not that night. Not the next day. I went back to work and kept to myself. People noticed, but no one asked. Maybe they'd heard rumors. Maybe Samantha had already started spinning her version of things. It didn't matter. I wasn't interested in defending myself. I was interested in rebuilding. One weekend, I visited my brother, Nate. We hadn't been close in years, not since a fight over money when our mom died. He'd said I was too generous with Sam, that I bent over backward for a woman who didn't love me the way I loved her. At the time, I'd been furious. Now, I saw he'd been right. He opened the door and stared at me like I was a ghost. Well, damn, he said. Look who finally remembered he's got a last name. I laughed for real that time. The first real laugh in weeks. We sat on his back porch, drinking cheap beer and eating grilled sausages, and I told him everything. Not the polished version I gave the lawyer, but the raw stuff. The shame, the disbelief, the anger. He didn't interrupt, didn't gloat. Just listened, nodding. You know what your mistake was? He said finally. Loving the wrong person? No, he said. Letting her convince you that love meant silence. That stuck with me. I went home that night and opened a blank Word document. I wrote a letter to Leah. Not a rant, not a guilt trip, just the truth. I don't know what your mom told you, but I want you to know what this feels like from my side. For 17 years, I believed you were mine, and I loved you like you were. That kind of love doesn't disappear overnight. But trust? That's different. Trust dies the moment someone laughs in your face about it. Maybe one day you'll understand that love and loyalty are not the same thing. I hope you grow into someone who values both. I'll always remember the good moments, but I have to move on now. For me, I didn't send it. Not yet, but it felt good to write. The letter sat on my desktop for over a week. Every time I opened my laptop, it stared back at me, unfinished and unread by the one person it was meant for. I kept telling myself I'd send it. Eventually, when the timing felt right, when I could read it without my hands shaking. But timing, like trust, is an illusion. It doesn't come. It's something you either seize or you let slip away. I finally sent it on a Tuesday morning. No subject line, just the text and a simple signature. Mark. Not dad, not father, just the name I came into the world with, the one I now had to reclaim. She read it. I know she did. The read receipt lit up my inbox within minutes, but no reply came. Not that day, not the next. Instead, silence returned, stretching itself like a bruise across the distance between us. At first, it felt like punishment. Then it felt like peace. Samantha, on the other hand, wasn't nearly so quiet. She started showing up at my office, twice in 1 week. The receptionist called ahead each time, her voice hesitant. There's a woman here. She says she's your wife. I corrected her. Soon-to-be ex-wife. The first time, I refused to see her. The second time, I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything. We met in the parking lot, a late afternoon sun casting long shadows between us. You think you're the only one who got hurt? She asked, arms crossed tightly over her chest. You think this was easy for me? No, I said. I think it was convenient for you. And I think you counted on me never finding out. She winced, as if the truth had teeth. You're punishing Leah, she said, trying a different angle. She's just a kid. She's 19, I said, and old enough to know when a joke is meant to cut. She played along with your secret. You taught her how to treat me. That shut her up. We stood in silence for a while. Cars passed behind us. A dog barked in the distance. I never meant for this to happen, she finally said. I didn't plan it. I didn't know how to undo it once it started. That's the difference between a mistake and a lie, I said. A mistake happens once. A lie gets lived in. I turned and walked away before she could reply. In the weeks that followed, the divorce moved forward. My lawyer sent over draft after draft, each one slowly unraveling the life I'd spent almost 2 decades stitching together. Joint accounts dissolved. Insurance plans separated. Custody agreements scrapped. There were no minors involved, no formal ties left. Just years of history that now lived in files and affidavits. Some nights, I couldn't sleep. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, staring out at the streetlights, and wonder if I should have done things differently. If maybe I'd overreacted. But every time I followed that thread, I came back to the same place. A dinner table where I was laughed at, not with. A punchline delivered with the full knowledge of what it meant. And no one stepped in to stop it. I started going to therapy, quietly, once a week, in a small office that smelled like sage and cheap coffee. My therapist was a woman in her 50s, soft-spoken but firm. She didn't offer platitudes. She listened, really listened. And slowly, I started unraveling not just what happened, but why it stayed with me so deeply. You weren't just mourning the betrayal, she said one afternoon. You were mourning the man you thought you were. That hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. I wasn't just hurt. I was disoriented. Like I'd spent years playing a role in a script I didn't write. I told her about the letter to Leah. About the silence that followed. She nodded. Sometimes silence is the answer, she said. It's not always rejection. Sometimes it's just someone not ready to see themselves the way they need to. I carried that with me. Nate invited me over again, this time for his son's birthday. I almost said no. I wasn't ready to be around families, to watch fathers and daughters laughing without wondering what kind of truth was buried beneath their smiles. But I went anyway, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. His wife hugged me. His son called me Uncle Mark like no time had passed. And for a few hours, I felt something close to normal again. That night, back home, I found another message on my phone. This one from Leah. I'm sorry. Just that. 2 words. A pebble dropped into a still pond. I stared at it, unsure how to feel. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. A beginning, maybe. Or just a ripple. Either way, I didn't reply. Some bridges burn clean. Others smolder for years. I didn't know which one ours would be. But for the first time in months, I was okay with not knowing. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. Not really. It was the realization that all those years. Birthdays, school plays, Sunday pancakes, late-night trips to the emergency room meant something different to me than they did to them. I was building a life, a family. They were surviving a situation. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just tear through my home, it cracked the foundation of who I believed I was. In therapy, I talked a lot about identity, about how I'd wrapped mine around the role of father and husband so tightly that when those roles were pulled away, I felt hollow. My therapist asked me once, when was the last time you did something just for yourself? I didn't have an answer. Maybe before Leah was born. Maybe never. So I started small. I bought myself a set of paintbrushes. Not because I was an artist, but because I'd always wanted to learn. I signed up for a class at the community center. Tuesday nights. Acrylics and soft music and a room full of people who didn't know me as her husband or her dad. Just Mark. I painted like a man digging for light through dirt. Awkward strokes, muddy colors. But with each canvas, I felt something loosen. A little more room in my chest to breathe. I even hung one in my apartment, messy but bright. A riot of orange and blue. Nate came over and laughed when he saw it. Looks like a sunset had a nervous breakdown. Thanks, I said. It's staying. Samantha tried one last time to reach out. An email, long and winding. She talked about the early days, the good memories, the shared routines. She admitted to fear, to guilt, to the pressure of a life built too fast on too little truth. It was probably the most honest thing she'd ever sent me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The divorce was finalized 2 days later. My lawyer called it a clean exit. No alimony, no contest. She kept the house. I didn't want it. That place was a mausoleum now, each wall haunted by what we pretended to be. Leah never sent another message. Just the one, I'm sorry. And in time, that became enough. Not because it healed anything, but because it let me stop waiting. I stopped checking my phone, stopped replaying old conversations, stopped wondering if she'd ever want to see me again. Maybe she would. Maybe not. But the man I was, the man who would have sacrificed his sanity to earn back someone's affection, that man was gone. I thought a lot about the word father, how it's supposed to mean more than DNA. And maybe it does, but it also means boundaries. It means knowing when to walk away. Because staying isn't the only measure of love. Sometimes, leaving is what love looks like when it finally decides to love itself back. One Saturday morning, I sat on my balcony with a coffee in one hand and a legal pad in the other. I wrote out the things I'd done over the years that I was proud of. Not for her. Not for Sam. For me. I wrote. I stayed when it was easier to leave. I loved when it wasn't returned the way I needed. I gave, not because I was asked, but because I believed it mattered. I walked away with dignity. I rebuilt. That list became my compass. Sometimes, people ask if I regret it. The marriage. The years. The effort. I tell them no. Because I was the man who stayed. I was the one who showed up. The one who carried more than his share without complaint, who sacrificed dreams for diapers, who chose family over freedom until family turned its back. And I can live with that. With all of it. Because in the end, I walked away not bitter, but awake. I stopped letting guilt masquerade as love. I stopped financing disrespect. I stopped giving my loyalty to people who saw me as replaceable. If Leah ever wants to know who I was to her truly, deeply, I hope someone tells her I was the man who stayed when it mattered, and the man who left when it didn't. I sat down one last time and rewrote the letter, not to send, but to remind myself. You don't owe people your soul just because they share your last name or your history. You owe yourself honesty and peace. I gave you everything I had. That was love. I left when I had nothing left to give. That was survival. I forgive you, not because you asked for it, but because I deserved to move on without carrying this weight. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and closed it. Then I turned toward the window, toward the light, toward the man I was finally becoming. If this story moved you, inspired reflection, or gave you a new perspective on family and self-worth, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more raw, real-life stories that dive deep into the heart of what it means to set boundaries and reclaim your voice. See you soon in the next story.